Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. The Rugby podcast took a bit of a week off there last week, but safe to say myself and Liam were charged up for more rugby this weekend. This episode's going to focus on URC action first, 4 from 4 from the Irish provinces. We'll have a preview of the Six Nations round 3. And also we'll look at some key contract news as well. Liam, how are things?
Yeah, mighty Mark. It's the weekend started pretty good with the win against Edinburgh for Munster. So after that, it was happy days.
What were your thoughts on the game, Liam? I mean, 34-20 win against a highly drilled Edinburgh side on Friday night.
It was really way more than we could possibly have hoped for. Possibly. I mean, this is definitely a potential banana skin. I know that they had lost to Leinster previously, but still, they're a fine attacking side, and to get the bonus point win in such style and to prevent them getting any losing bonus point was actually a great result for Munster. And it's got us right up the league, of course, as well.
Yeah, God, it was a super. Like I mentioned it on my kind of Facebook page, it was a must-win game for Munster, just given what had happened the previous week. Glasgow Warriors and Scotston, that was a kind of a disappointing result. And it was a real kind of, I felt kind of a must-win for Munster. But like they started the game, gusto, I thought, it was very impressive opening period, really kind of dominating in the collisions. I thought O'Donoghue was absolutely fantastic from start to finish there, Liam, and really did set up Wycherley's try very early days. It was a good try.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd almost a complete game, actually. Yeah, Jack O'Donoghue, I have to say. And as I said, like that's carries that really just made it that Wycherley just could power over at that stage. For that start, of course, he had good putting position as well, Wycherley. But he still had some work to do as well.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very, ruck time as well for Munster. I thought it was pretty accurate during the contest. Chris Cloythe came in, had another good game, I thought. Breakdown, he's absolutely sensational. And as well as that, Chris Farrell was very prominent at early doors as well, Liam, particularly for the opening penalty for Ben Healy. His kind of drive, it was a lovely line run there to kind of get Edinburgh to get pinged. So, 10-0 up at that stage, I thought everything was kind of pretty confident. But in credit to Edinburgh, they haven't been top of the URC standings for nothing. And they did regroup significantly in that second quarter. And, they did have one or two moments there, particularly in that second quarter. They tacked on their opening penalty, but their try really did showcase what they're capable of when they get ball in hand and get a little bit of time and space in attack.
Oh yeah, that was just a beautifully worked try, and Edinburgh got it well in behind us, and the two Argentinian guys prominent, of course, Buffelli and Moijano, two of the classiest probably wingers in the league, and it just shows what they're capable of. I mean, they've been doing this all season, Edinburgh, and Moijano has got his 6 tries now. He's just flying in the league.
Absolutely. It was kind of their speed of thought, their hand speed, everything else. I didn't think Munster did a whole lot wrong in terms of their defensive setup there, but it was just the speed, the attacking width that was created by Edinburgh was just sensational. They're one of those teams in the URC, if you give a clean line break, Edinburgh more than likely will execute and run in tries. And it did provide things into the melting pot quite a bit there going into half-time, really. But I suppose one of the key marquee storylines of the day was probably Simon Zebo and his hat-trick, 5 touches, 3 touchdowns. It was. But again, I think you have to credit the Munster overall performance here, just in terms of the attacking lines, the quick ruck ball, and the passing distribution that really kind of led to his 3 tries.
Yeah. For me, even from the beginning, actually, we were talking about Farrell's crash ball. It was your man Casey was willing to break, and I thought he did it all game, right? So it's Casey's breaking, right? But it was also the hands of Ben Healy, yes. Absolutely crucial in all those other tries. And obviously as well, you could say, well, he was just literally there in the left wing and he ran in, but that's what a winger does. No, give him credit there. But I think Healy made a lot of Zebo's tries there for sure.
Oh, completely. I think that was I was very pleased with Ben Healy. Look, he's kicking is beyond reproach, I think. And it's another probably a good opportunity for the Scottish teams to really run the rule over Healy, given the 1-year contract. situation. He was linked with Glasgow Warriors. I wouldn't be all surprised if Edinburgh Rugby are probably monitoring his situation now after the performance he had last Friday night. But it was his soft hands, particularly, as you say, Liam, particularly on Zebo's tries. Again, it looks very easy when Zebo gets that touches down. But the fact of the matter is, it's the setup work, it's the concentration, it's the execution. And Healy gave that in spades, I thought. And it was a superb performance for him and really does probably send a statement of intent to Van Gran in terms of Healy and his progression. There's a nice little halfback battle going on here, particularly with the likes of Crowley. You have Ben Healy, and also be remiss to say Jake Flannery here. Granted, Carberry's back, on international duty, but at least we have guys here that are putting a hand up, and the performances seem to be elevating week on week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Healy. The most interesting thing is even for the rest of the season. When Carberry comes back from the Six Nations, if Healy keeps tearing up trees like this, it's going to be a real battle on their hands as to who you would pick for the knockout games as opposed to Crunch European games and those URC games as well. I think at this stage maybe Crowley realistically, get some game time, but in the season it's between the other two guys for the starting 10 spot.
Exactly, because you do have a key South African trip coming up next month. Again, heading down to the Lions and also to the Bulls as well, those rearranged fixtures. And I know there's also a trip to the Dragons as well, looming large as well. So, these are going to be key. I'm feeling right now here, Liam, just given how tight it is in the URC, the overall standings. You've Ulster, you've Leinster, the Irish Conference as well, doing incredibly well. Every one of these games for Munster Rugby now is essentially a must-win, just given the form of the two other provinces there. And also you have Connacht Rugby probably on their heels as well. So I think form on the training paddock is going to be quite crucial here, I think, going into these games.
Yeah, you've got essentially at the top now of the URC, you've got kind of 5 teams thereabouts. And to be fair, they were probably the 5 you would pick at the start of the season to be there at this particular time. But yeah, absolutely. The simple fact is, in a month's time, or in a month's time, Munster could be have lost a few games and down the table again. But look at the fixtures. Also, you'd have to say Dragons, really should be a bit of a banker. And even for South Africa, certainly the Lions are third from bottom of the table and are not particularly. They're a team that we could definitely pick off as well, I think, in that trip.
I would probably agree with that assessment, Liam, because I think the Lions, we marked this out in this podcast a few weeks ago. There has been an awful lot of concern, particularly in the South African rugby circles, regarding the Lions. The other 3 teams have been very competitive in terms of their kind of local derby matches, but the Lions have shown flashes. I know they were quite close to a result against the Bulls a few weeks ago, but that hasn't been the norm. It's been very much 15, 20-point losses, and I think there has to be question marks in terms of the Lions this year and even going forward. So I'd agree with you there. The Dragons will probably get to with Ulster Rugby in due course, but yeah, it's all evenly poised there, Liam. I suppose it'd be remiss of us not to mention Dave Kilcoyne as well, 200 cap for the province in a marvellous achievement. But you look led by example, didn't he, on Friday night?
Yeah, I you know what, actually, when we talk about moments of the match, I have to say it was Killer's crunch and tackle, knocking Edinburgh back, literally knocking them. That for me was actually the highlight of the game, I have to say. And it was still at a crucial time when the game was in the balance,
Exactly, Liam, because, you look at the tackle count here, and this is from Munster Rugby. The tackles, Munster put in 180 tackles during the 80 minutes, which is quite phenomenal when you kind of consider a 34-20 scoreline. Edinburgh only 81. There was missed tackles of 18 versus 11, but I think you can, that's kind of a pinch of salt, really, given the tackle count. And I think that Kilcoyne tackle that you're talking about, Liam, that was absolutely crucial. Game, as you say, it was still in the melting pot. Edinburgh were still well in this game. Creates that turnover ball, and it seemed to galvanise the crowd as well and the team to really kind of go and move into another gear going into that fourth quarter. Yeah,
and look, that's ultimately how you win games, and those little key moments, key turnovers. And obviously, you need to be scoring tries and all as well. But Edinburgh had a bit of momentum at that stage, and I could have actually seen them going over, and then the game was completely in the balance at that stage.
Oh, it's completely 50-50 game if they did go over at that stage, So which was something that maybe Mike Blair, the head coach, had highlighted after the Leinster rugby loss, that the physicality and just being in the moment wasn't really there. I mean, they certainly were in game, red zone position to score something, but it was a key kind of intervention from Kilcoyne. But his ball carrying, his work rate overall, he did set the tone, as I said, long with O'Donoghue, Cloyte, again, Clyne solid. The pack, it was very much a pack platform, but I did love some of the tries, particularly the Mike Haley line break to set up Zebo. I thought that was a superb turn of foot, and to basically straighten the Edinburgh last defender and pass it to Zebo. I thought that was an incredible score as well. And I think there's an awful lot to like about this Munster performance. I know there's maybe parts of it, particularly penalty concession, stuff like that, but to score 34 points in conditions like that, you have to be kind of impressed, I would think, just given what went on there on Friday night.
Oh yeah. You'd have to be hugely impressed. Munster overall played very well in that game. I mean, and to be honest with you, I'm surprised with the tackle count. I thought it was kind of a lot more even at times. And as you said, the ruck ball again is key. So we had quick ruck ball, then it means your attacking phases very quickly, and the two halves we had were actually on complete form that night as well. So the platform and then the backs should just run it in.
Absolutely, and I thought the bench were superb when they came on as well. It was great to see Hognett, Cadellan as well come on as well. I mean, given more ammunition there to that back row unit. I mean, geez, like back row unit depth chart wise, it's looking pretty decent here for Munster Rugby, isn't it? So, and culminating to the end of the game, and I was delighted to see Neil Cronin play a very pivotal part in that last try. He changed direction of the attack to set up Zebo for the try, because Cronin's block kicked against Glasgow, Scotstoun. I saw some social media commentary there, and I thought it was completely overboard. I mean, it was one of those things, but Cronin bounced back, as a true professional that he is, and really did set up that decisive bonus point try, which, in the context of things here, Liam, a point or two in the difference come the end of the regular season, that could be an absolutely huge score for Munster come the end of the season, regular season, to get into playoffs and the big dance for European Championship Rugby.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, as good as he played, like for his first 60, obviously, there was 20 minutes there, essentially, the final 20 minutes where, we needed that try. We desperately needed it to try. And as you said, yeah, absolutely, Cronin completely bedazzled them, like basically by going right and then actually turning left. And yeah, beautiful pass, of course, as well. And yeah, good finish again for Zebo. And yeah, Haley, I mean, one thing maybe he's criticised for at times is he just puts the head down. He doesn't really look to pass the ball. But yeah, look, I mean, it was a good break as well, actually. Yeah, to be fair.
Yeah, I've thought Mike Haley in the fullback position for Munster, he's evolved since he's been here. We always knew he's defensive qualities, but I think in the last year to 2 years, with Stephen Larkin in charge, and I mean, it might have been seen sporadically, but when he does get that a position or opportunity to hit the line, more chances than not, he is creating meters gained, which is, brilliant. Like, and I think it was key here as well. I think he's continuing to evolve into a vital player. And same, I think, for Simon Zebo as well. I think come that South African trip again here, Liam, we'll mention it over and over again. But I think at the end of the season, like, Zebo should be coming into form now. I mean, he hasn't had that many games. And I think he's going to be a vital cog to the side, just given Keith Earls, there seems to be extended injury kind of news on him. There is going to be experience required, particularly when you go down to South Africa, and particularly at the regular end of the season games, particularly when we're playing Leinster Rugby. And it's great to have a guy like Zebo that can finish off these moves and have that reputation that opposition do have to kind of warrant and respect.
Yeah, I mean, like, when you think about Simon Zebo, has there ever been a winger who like at provincial level who scores that phenomenal amount of tries? Like, I know that Zebo went away to France for a few years, and then it allowed Earlsy to catch up a bit, but now he's just like completely gone again, like, ahead in terms of Munster record try scorer. And with Earls obviously sidelined for, it seems to be quite a bit of the rest of the season, Zebo is going to be absolutely key to us getting wins on the road, particularly in South Africa trip as well. I also think, like, I mean, I was looking at, I'd be looking ahead to the end of the season and the knockout stages and Exeter, and like, we would have had a bench of probably the likes of Kendellen and Hodnett, and we hope again finally Jason Jenkins at some stage, and Zebo, but Zebo can still come in and do a great job for the team anyway.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be key. It's these experienced guys like the Jenkins we've talked about in the previous podcast. If we can get him absolutely fully fit, I think Jenkins is a massive, powerful unit to come in, even with 25-30 minutes to go in these extra chief games or against Leinster Rugby, teams of that ilk. You're going to have to need that impact off the bench. So I think overall, Munster can be relatively happy with that performance anyway. I suppose we can switch quickly to the other three Irish provincial fixtures over the weekend. I suppose Leinster accounted for Ospreys. It was horrendous weather in the RDS. They defeated the Ospreys 29-7. I suppose 200 cap for Sean Cronin, the Leinster hooker. But I think pack platform was the key word here for Leinster with Cian Healy and also Scott Penny's tries. But I suppose that the highlight reel moments here came from Jordan Larmour, the grubber kick from Byrne, and then James Lowe with his audacious try. Had no small measure from a Byrne kick to Jimmy O'Brien, who then set the New Zealander off for a memorable try. Again, Ospreys weren't really there at the races, unfortunately, but I think for Leinster, a nice performance nonetheless.
Yeah, that's a comprehensive scoreline, isn't it? And certainly Jimmy O'Brien is tearing up trees anyway this season for Leinster, and he was particularly prominent again in the game. Scott Penny, really stand-up performance. He just shows what quality he is, a real quality player, and tremendous finish there, I must say, for James Lowe with his show and go there as well, and kicks.
Exactly. No, in fairness to the Ospreys, they were under the pump for quite a long periods of that game. Now Reese Webb's try was outstanding as well. Like Reese Webb's skill set as scrum half is sensational, and I just wonder with him, have Wayne Pivac and the Welsh coaching staff missed a trick by not having him there, because his try was pure class, spotting the gap around ruck time, and made Luke McGrath look pretty ordinary, which is saying an awful lot because Luke McGrath is a superb defensive player for Leinster, but again didn't really matter that much. Again, I think Pack for Leinster controlled this. The amount of penalties Andrew Brace was having to give, I think Ospreys, on another day could have been given an absolute hiding here. But I think it was just the weather conditions, stuff like that, probably denied a few scoring opportunities here for Leinster. I think overall, great win for them. And they sit kind of honestly placed there in the overall URC standings here, 29-7. Connacht, the first win since 2004 in Scarlets. They won 29-23. And I think this is an outstanding result here, Liam, for Connacht. Not just for the context of the URC, but I thought just psyche-wise, they went down pretty early 10-0 here in this game. But then they had the composure to get back into this game. Sammy Arnold with a great try. Now, I don't know if you saw the replay here, Liam, but there was a few medical personnel on the pitch. And I don't know if Jones, the fly half for Scarlets, thought there was a few Connacht players injured out on the sideline. But his kind of diagonal kick was caught by Arnold in for the try, and that kind of set the platform thereon. Some lovely scores, 3 tries for Connacht during the game. Leva Fifita and also John Porch as well. Now, Paul Boyle came back into the starting lineup and I thought had an immense game. 8 carries, 34 metres. Keane Prendergast, 16 tackles, was outstanding. And the back line overall for Connacht was very lively. Now, I think there's been commentary about some of the officiating as well here, Liam. Fifita's kind of yellow card, and then a second yellow card straight after he came back for kind of it looked like kind of a coming together, a body check, but I thought it was a pretty harsh call. But again, Connacht were full value. They were 29-13 up at that stage. But again, I think big serious questions for the Scarlets, I think, going into the rest of the season. It just hasn't happened for them, and you wonder with Dwayne Peel and the Scarlets coaching staff, what next?
Yeah, no, but in terms of Scarlets, you'd have to say in terms of the quality of the squad, Cardiff have the best, right, team and squad in Wales by far and away, and then you'd nearly be expecting Scarlets, and you'd be expecting a lot more from Scarlets. They have the tradition, they have the players still. I would argue they still have the players as well. and just hasn't happened for them at all this season. And going to Scarlets was always like one of the tough trips in the league. So that's a just tremendous result for Connacht. And, you have Carty flying, and Fifita actually finally, played a big game as well. He brought in his power along as well.
Exactly, and I think Fifita as well, he had a powerful game. I think the red card, it does kind of, it's an unfortunate one. To me, personally, I think the second incident doesn't warrant the second yellow card, but he had a powerful game. Murray as well had a great game in second row, and we've been asking here, Liam, in this podcast for the Connacht front five to really step up. Duggan as well, I think, had 18, 19 tackles. I think to a man in that front five, they responded. And I think from a kind of a coaching perspective for Connacht, it's a great win. Kind of, again, it's one of these wins that keeps them in touch with the top teams here. But again, it's must-win territory for Connacht going for the rest of the season. But well done to them. First win in Scarlet since 2004. That's a nice little hoodoo off the back. And then finally, Ulster Rugby. And to be honest, whenever I see a game at Dragons on a Sunday afternoon in February, it's always a gale force wind mudbath. And this was no exception. 12-0. Quality-wise, it was in very short supply, just given the weather conditions. But in fairness to Ulster, they were professional. They got the job done. And James Hume probably and McCluskey probably standing out for Ulster, particularly in attacking play.
Yeah, all I can say is I heard that the conditions were horrendous, that kicks were basically going backwards or to side, So you might elaborate on that more.
Yeah, because, the tail of the tape, Dragons had a breeze behind them in the first half, and again, Ulster Rugby platform-wise, very impressive. Really stemmed any sort of home attacks. Marcus Ray scored a try just before half-time, and I think the highlight here was the James Hume line break. There'd been precious few clean line breaks before that, but Hume made a 35 metre gain. Great support from Doak to basically have it within 2-3 metres of the Dragons line, and a quick recycle got Marcus Ray into the corner. 5-0 at the half-time, and then soon after the break, John Andrew with the try, and again, another Ulster Rugby attacking ball try here. Liam, I've lost count the number of tries they've scored in the URC using that attacking ball, but it's a complete weapon for them. And at that stage, Dragons pack had struggled. They had been giving away an awful lot of penalties, particularly at maul time. So again, and it was a great kick from Doak as well to make it 12-0. But I suppose, unfortunately for Sam Davis, Dragons did try to put on a bit of a spurt, and he was presented with a penalty just left of the post, about 22 metres up, but given the conditions, it went wide. Whatever way the ball went, it just literally went to the left-hand side of the post. And the Dragons basically scoreless, shutout. They've had no home win this season as well, so it looks quite ominous for the Dragons, just given the departures of Hibbert, Roberts as well. But again, Ulster, these are the games, Liam, you always say it here in this podcast. These are the games that we won't really remember. But when it comes to the end of regular season standings, these games where the squad depth is basically exercised, these are the games which will be separating the seedings. And for Ulster Rugby, it's a very professional performance in very tough conditions.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually more than anything else the kind of performance and result that proves that Ulster really are in contention for the title. How many times the last 3 seasons have we lost away, recently, even this season, to Ospreys, losing away to Scarlets, those sort of, performances where realistically be expecting to even get a result away. And it's knocked Munster back in the last few seasons and even up to now. So, that's actually a tremendous result for Ulster.
Yeah, it certainly keeps the momentum going there as well, doesn't it, Liam? They're top of the URC standings. Leinster are hovering with intent. They're in second place. Again, you have Glasgow, Munster, Edinburgh there as well. But again, it just keeps the momentum building quite nicely here for Ulster and Dan McFarland's side. Heading into more crunch fixtures and then going into Toulouse last 16 fixtures, which look epic, just given the form guide that Ulster are on at the moment. So we'll probably leave it there for the URC anyway. Great weekend again for the Irish provinces, and maybe we'll turn our attention here, Liam, to the Six Nations round 3 kind of preview here. We can go down them through chronological order, put heads on the block time. Scotland v France. Scotland, again, I don't know, I was massively disappointed with them in Cardiff in round 2, facing a French side that showed flashes of absolute brilliance against Ireland, but then were made to kind of struggle, particularly in the second half. I don't know where you see this game going, Liam.
Yeah, well, the first thing I should remember is that Scotland actually beat them last year with Duhan van der Merwe, if I remember. So, it's Scotland, France, the Scots could very well turn up and turn over France and put the whole championship completely on its head now. So in terms of Scotland, I mean, yeah, there's some good players actually missing. Johnny Gray and Rory Sutherland are actually going to be out for that game. France, really, they have to kick on. This is the sort of banana skin that essentially deprived them of winning the championship, say, last year. So if I was looking at it, I would say Scotland are at home to France. I think it'll be actually quite a close affair. And I think this time that France, I would say maybe by 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of your great points there, Liam, was to do with this Scottish pack depth. It's going to get tested massively now, isn't it? Likes of Johnny Gray, Rory Sutherland out. They've 5 injured, 6 coming into the squad. Getting their second row squad depth looks a bit threadbare at the moment. I just worry for Scotland. And I mean, this is after an opening round Calcutta Cup win against England. Does this team to me in Wales seem to believe their own hype a bit? That they thought they were better than they actually were? Because I thought that performance was completely flat. They seemed to think that the game was going to be presented to them on a plate when Wales manfully basically shut down kind of Finn Russell, shut down the space, good aggressive defensive line speed. I think Scotland will provide a response, but I think, as you say here, France, surely looking historically at what happened the last time they went to Murrayfield, I think there is a 10-point win here for France. Honestly, I do. I think they showed flashes against Ireland, and I think, Ireland, to their credits, stuck in and hung in there. I just don't get that sense from Scotland if they were to go down early here. I think France could absolutely rule the roost here. Just with their back three, Penno, I think, has been playing outstandingly well, and he played outstandingly well against Ireland. You Dupont and Tamac, they're just warming to the task now after being affected a little bit with the COVID win to lose situation. I think it's a French win all day long here, and Scotland may have, I think Scotland's front 5 may have massive issues here. Wouldn't be surprised if the 1 or 2 getting into the sin bin, particularly in that defensive maul. I think France will relish this. So I think we're both going for the away win there. And then after that, England v Wales. I mean, this is a interesting fixture because, England narrowly got beaten by Scotland and Murrayfield. They had acres of possession, territory, didn't really execute. And then they came back with a 33-0 shutout of Italy and Rome. I mean, you can say it's Italy, but I thought there was good signs for England. And then Wales, backs against the wall after their Dublin nightmare. I don't think it was a shock against Scotland, to be perfectly honest. I mean, people have been critical of that game. It was a thriller, but I think the quality of it may have been a little bit questionable. But I think Wales got the job done, 2017. So again, these two, don't need much to kind of get a competitive game going. So it'll be interesting here, I think.
Yeah, well, for a start, we've had Mike Brown come out and say that, I suppose, no Welsh player would currently make the English starting team. So that's going to be pinned up on the dashboard by Wayne Pivac, I reckon, because even if you think about it, I mean, that probably isn't correct, actually, You probably would have the 2 Welsh wingers anyway, or the 2 English wingers. But in terms of England, yeah, I mean, look, we go back to the Scotland game, and yeah, Scotland played okay, but was it really that England actually threw that game in many respects, as well? And so they have a kind of lack of discipline and a lack of control. And, so that sometimes kind of Marcus Smith always makes up for, with his genius. And the forwards, yeah, some of the forwards for England still aren't kicking on as well either. Up front, I suppose I'd be looking at the back row as well. So in terms of it, yeah, I think this is it can be an interesting game to call. England, I suppose, are at home. Recent records it's been quite tight between the two of them. Wales still are without their key leaders. So I would be tipping England. I would go maybe plus 10 points.
We were critical of the Welsh front 5, particularly against Ireland in round 1. And in fairness to that front 5, they stepped up massively against Scotland. But I do feel that this England front five is a different animal to what they faced in Cardiff in round 2. And I think, again, it's that Welsh front five are going to have to stand up and really be counted for, because otherwise it could be another road trip nightmare for them. I think from England's perspective, I think they may have stepped on their now long-term halfback partnership. Bristol Bears Ramble and also Marcus Smith, 9-10. They look a very exciting combination for England. And Joe Marston as well, switching to 13, huge. Provides a bit of directness, provides a bit of go-forward ball at 13. Eddie Daly, great footballer, but to be honest, if he's not playing 15 or at the wing, I thought that was a baffling decision off Eddie Jones for that Scottish game. And also with George as well, back at hooker as well, did seem to provide a bit of solidity there. You know, he scored his 2 tries against Italy as well. Yeah, for Wales, I think it's going to be, you know, really under the pump for the first maybe 25, 30 minutes here, really absorb what England are going to have massive territory here. And I think the key question for this game, Liam, is how effective England are going to be in the red zone. You know, what sort of attacking lines, what sort of attacking threats, because they were very kind of prone to Grubber kicking that ball away, particularly against Scotland. Will they do a similar tactic here against Wales, or will they vary it out a little bit, you know, take a little bit more in contact, offload, quick hands? So, yeah, for me, I think it's Wales or England, you know, to win this one. And hopefully a little bit of a better performance for Wales road trip wise than in Dublin. But I can only see 10-15 point win going away for probably England at the end. But it's going to be an intriguing fixture there. And then it kind of leads then to Sunday. Ireland v Italy, 3 p.m. in the Aviva Stadium. Yeah, Italy kind of coming in 0 for 2. I have notes here. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. 1 step forward is, a progressive performance against France in the opening round. And then to get shut out at home to England in Rome. Again, some very unforced errors in the pack. As a unit, seem to be pretty overwhelmed by England. How do you feel this one's going to go, Liam, and maybe Ireland team selection on the day?
Yeah, it's only a question of how much Ireland are going to win by, isn't it, really, at this stage? Yeah, Italy, like, you know, usually in the first few games in the championship, they're actually competitive to a point, and then they just absolutely collapse because injuries take their toll and they don't have the squad depth. And when you have guys like Negri just being carted off, you know, yeah, it's looking quite ominous for them. In terms of, Italy, I don't really think they've really done any progression really this season, unfortunately, has to be said. So for Ireland, you'd be looking at definitely in terms of starting positions, it's quite intriguing actually, you know, because you could even be looking at, we'll say, Hinshaw Aki. You know, they haven't actually played together too often at full international level, you know. I'd like to see maybe a case for Carty to get a game, and not just when I say get a game, I mean start a game. Very, very much so. We need to be looking at props as well, kind of our backup props as well coming in. And yeah, James Lowe is back in the squad, so he certainly is definitely pushing for selection as well. I'd be looking to see him as well. If Henderson came into the second row, even Ty Byrne at 6, yeah, it would be an interesting selection as well for this game.
The team selection for Ireland might be the kind of key pre-game and match commentary here, because no disrespect to Italy here, but I've kind of said it here repeatedly on the blog and Twitter, you know, 2023 is where you're looking to kind of evaluate yourself with everyone, a World Cup. And I mean, this is a perfect opportunity for Andy Farrell and his coaching staff to run the rule over maybe a few players. I mean, Hugo Keenan is a lock at full back anyway, but would it be kind of prudent to now kind of maybe see a Mike Lowry or someone of that ilk at full back? Maybe James Hume as well kind of comes into the picture, because I think Farrell does like Hume in terms of his go-forward ball. And maybe a Ryan Baird as well at second row. You know, particularly his athleticism, everything about it. And maybe crystal ball, Tom O'Toole as well. Maybe being kind of a decision. We have to run the rule over Tom O'Toole. I mean, he's been given precious little time in terms of being in test match rugby. I think this is one where we need to kind of run the rule over guys like that to see, you know, they need to get experience first of test match rugby and see whether they can get to that level. So I think the decision here from Andy Farrell will be intriguing. I would be with you as well in terms of 10. I think Sexton, we know what he has. It's between Carberry and Carty for game minutes, you know, and it's really just down. He probably will go for Carberry, but again, what's Jack Carty there for? as well. So maybe get some lengthy game minutes if we get a bonus point pretty early in the game, maybe with 45, 50 minutes gone, throw them in for 35 minutes just to kind of get that kind of squad depth going in terms of 10. So, yeah, for me, hopefully, I'm hoping for Italy, just given reports, in terms of 2025, that they come out with a performance here because it's required. But I think Ireland here, if they can just go through the process, execute well, set piece wise, looks like Ireland, particularly scrum and line out particularly. It would be interesting in the line-out, though, I would say, Liam, with news that Ronan Kelleher has been ruled out for the remainder of Six Nations. You have Dan Sheehan there. Rob Herring obviously comes into the picture as well. Dave Heffernan, who will be kind of that go-to guy now, because it seemed like Kelleher had that jersey at the start. So I wonder, that'll be an intriguing kind of subplot to see who gets that jersey for Italy. And a good performance there for whoever starts may kind of be a viewpoint to England and also Scotland going forward. But for me, Ireland, I think, bonus point win, probably a 20, 30 plus point win, unfortunately for Italy, which is not doing anything for them in their development, even though their under 20s are doing superbly well at the moment. There was more Six Nations news, alluded to it there about 30 seconds ago, just in terms of that English media reports about 2025 and the South Africa rugby coming into the Six Nations at the expense of Italy. I don't know what your thoughts were, Liam, on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I think there is something to it. I mean, there's always been the last few years when you had the South African teams being allowed into the URC, the next logical step for them as a union is to completely line their national team playing in a competition in the same season as their URC sides. So, I think it's definitely on the cards. I think in terms of, I don't think it's a thing of Italy being kicked out. I think PR-wise it would be a disaster for South Africa coming in. I think for the Six Nations it would be a bit of a disaster because Italy would be pretty much abandoned and professional rugby would die a death completely.
Exactly. Yeah.
I also think Italy realistically are probably the 12th best team in the world. And so if we're talking about this new World League, the top 12 teams, you could see it that basically you'll have the 7 playing in Europe, and then the other 5 are going to be the All Blacks, the Aussies, the Japanese, the Argentinians, and the Fijians. So that's very handy, there's your top 12 there. I think actually there's an argument to be made in terms of tradition, funny enough, in terms of that it's a European competition and it could be actually slightly devalued if South Africa were to come in. So that's looking at it from a European perspective. From a South African perspective, you could nearly argue that giving up games against the best team in the world each year, and sometimes it's definitely 2 games a year, potentially sometimes it's 3, to give that up also is hard to do, and maybe they should be thinking through that a bit more as well.
Yeah, I suppose, look, as you say, Liam, I think CVC, the private and equity firm that has stakes now in URC, they have stakes in an awful lot of competitions, including Six Nations. This is, I think, inevitable that this will happen sooner rather than later. And I think 2025, I know you had mentioned off air here regarding kind of South African obligations, particularly to the Rugby Championship as well. That'll have to extend probably to 2026. But again, if the South African sides are playing European Cup Rugby, they're playing URC against Irish, Scottish, Welsh. The inevitability is that they come into this tournament, but as I say, it should not be at the expense of Italy. And I think this is where the creative scheduling should be coming into play here. This whole kind of test match rugby versus club, professional club, I think there has to be a complete massive overhaul in terms of how fixtures are scheduled. It wouldn't hurt now for, I think, Six Nations, even organisers, even to look at this into April, that you have a window from April to August to literally play test match rugby. And again, what people haven't even mentioned here is the tier 2 nations that have been on the outside for so many years. I mean, Six Nations really has the tournament organisers, their committee members. We've never really talked about Spain, have we? And Romania, Georgia, in terms of even getting an opportunity to get into the big dance. If that is the case, if South Africa does come in, then I think there has to be some sort of promotion, relegation consequence here. in terms of a tier 2 nation. We have the European Rugby Championship going on at the moment, some exhilarating games going on at the moment. What is the end prize for whoever wins that after the 5-6 games? That sort of perspective. And then you have World Rugby that have to come in then, because as you say yourself, Southern Hemisphere, where does Samoa come into the picture here? Where does Tonga come in? Where do all these other tier 2 nations that want to basically aspire to get to the next level, how are they going to develop if they're just basically on the outside, maybe getting an occasional November international or maybe a summer series with a second or third string side from, let's say, the Northern Hemisphere coming to visit them for a one-off test match? I think it has serious implications for World Rugby at the moment. I mean, it will happen, South Africa coming in, but I think you could have literally the 7 teams, 6 fixtures each. You could have literally a bye week for every one of the sides, and then maybe midway through you could literally have a kind of a 1 week window as well. But maybe switching it to April might incentivize a few more broadcasters to advertise. Let's say you're getting more exhilarating games than maybe in February, where it's windy, stormy, wet conditions. Let's say in Dublin on a Sunday, where it could be a bit benign on an April, May day, and you're getting 50 to 32 score lines, which, that's what we're looking for, put bums on seats and everything else. So I think from the perspective, I think the PR and the way this news is broke is very unfortunate for Italy, because they're trying damn hard to kind of progress and develop their under grassroots. You can see it with the under 20s. Their 6-0 win over England was a marquee result. That is completely diluted after news of this happening. So I think from a perspective of Six Nations, I think the members have to basically be firmly behind the Italians here, that they're here for the long haul. I mean, it's not long ago when France were struggling in the 40s, 50s, they were getting hockeyed. Same with Ireland. Different periods, different teams go through cycles. So now it's a case of this be a worrying precedent. So I think, this will inevitably happen. Money will talk eventually, but I think there has to be proper discussion in terms of creative fixture scheduling. World Rugby have to get involved here in terms of where is the demarcation between the professional club rugby scene versus your international test match. And then if it's a case of 4 to 5 months being designated for test match rugby, and if players are going to literally essentially be contract players for test match rugby, like in Sevens rugby, then so be it. But I think it's a fascinating story, and plenty of viewpoints. But again, I think South Africa looking in, they're obviously looking to get in here. I suppose we conclude here, Liam, with some contract news as well. And I mean, while we're in the South African realm and domain, Mr. Ethelbeth is leaving Toulon to go to the Sharks. What a marquee signing for the URC.
Yeah, Becky's both isn't too happy.
No.
and among others, either is the president of Toulon, it has to be said. And this is a thing that, maybe hasn't been mentioned up to now, but the South African players, they're excellent players, but they haven't really contributed in the way they should across the board, really, in England, in France, and in Ireland as well. Just in terms of the amount of time that they're now available. And again, this is all back to the seasons not being aligned. The time they're not available when they're in training with the South Africa for a rugby championship. And then they seem to come back, play 2 games, and get injured for near the rest of the season. We've had a lot of South African players haven't really played that much rugby in the past 2 seasons. Etzebeth is kind of like a sign of the across the board. South African players are not actually worth money for European clubs to be paying them big money as their marquee signings. And now with England, with the salary cap, they have to look at their players. What guy are they going to be actually offloading? And it's going to be the South African guy. It's going to be Lou de Jager is also going to be offloaded by Sale Sharks as well. In Ireland, we think that Damien de Allende, and he probably has played the most games of any South African in Europe in the last 2 seasons as a measure of success.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, as you say, but I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of that guy. Absolute monster. He came out with comments saying, and he was very disappointed to hear that news that Ethelbeth was going to leave Toulon at the end of this season. Said that he had plenty more to give to that rugby club. This was Bota's association with Toulon is pretty legendary, along with Wilkinson. But the Toulon club president comes out to the media and basically cites Ethelbeth is a handicap to the club. I mean, for the player and his officials and representatives, I mean, that's kind of telling you that you're not wanted. And I think the Sharks, could be getting an absolute steal here in terms of a signing leading into 2023. Another marquee South African test match guy coming back into South African rugby, will be managed well. God, like South Africa look pretty stacked, I would think, going into 2023 with all these players coming back. And I think, Liam, you kind of alluded to, I think 5 of the South African test match team now are around the Sharks. So, I mean, what a tonic here for URC, literally for teams travelling down to South Africa to see these quality of players coming into the league week in, week out.
Rassie. That's what I say. It's all part of the grand plan for Rassie again, isn't it? Like, he'll have by the end of before World Cup, he'll have the entire Springbok, like first 15 will be playing in South Africa again. Yeah, that's the way it looks anyway to me. But look, Etzebeth is like one of the best second rows in the world, so to have him there is like incredible, like, And the much maligned URC, Tyg Furlong, Etzebeth, Doris, Byrne, Khaleesi, when you think of those names, there you go. They'd all be in a potential World 15. So yeah, tremendous signing, all right.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the brand, the URC, it's a fledgling brand. I think in the next few weeks, hopefully, ignites the passion with South African fans for the URC, very similar to Irish, Scottish, Welsh fans as well of the league. If we can develop those games superbly well next month, I think we've a superb brand. And as I say, it's a marquee signing again. Etzebeth will be featuring for the Sharks quite prolifically. It's a great signing, and I say the Agar guys like that could be kind of transferred down to the Lions again. And we've maligned the Lions in this podcast episode, but again, they could get a few of these guys coming back from Europe. I mean, where is the destination here for them for an awful lot of these South African guys? I mean, the salary cap in the Gallagher Premiership is pretty stringent. French pro rugby now have a bit of a negative attitude on South African players. The only other place that can really go is probably Japan. And I mean, going into a 2023 kind of World Cup year, you don't want to be doing that, because Rasmus has all these domestic guys there waiting and willing for Curry Cup games, all that sort of stuff. So it will be an interesting watch to see these players move in the next probably few weeks. With that then, maybe we switched maybe more domestically, and Tyg Byrne signing the IRFU contract last week. A superb tonic for Irish rugby in general, but I think for any professional Irish rugby player, the case study of a Tyg Byrne who was kind of in the provincial systems, then went away to the Scarlets, made a name for himself and reputation for himself, moves back, now is basically rewarded with a long overdue IRFU contract for 3 years. Great news altogether, Liam, isn't it?
Oh, tremendous. And also, he'd be one of the first names on the team sheet now, maybe behind, obviously, Tyg Furlong. So from where these came from, it was just crazy, to be effectively let go from Leinster, to have the Scarlets take a chance on him. That season, of course, then when he was with them, he suddenly became like the best back row in Europe, playing for a tremendous team. And then he comes back to Munster, and he even, he's kicked on more now. And again, like for Ireland too, he's pretty much undroppable. It's for me, he's one of these guys that makes the key moments in games now. In terms of his ruck ball, in terms of his turnovers, and in terms of his tackles, and well done to him for getting a central contract with the IRFU.
Exactly, and British Irish Lions tour, again, players just literally excel after a tour like that. The coaching you're getting day in, day out, with your peers, guys that you've looked up to, stuff like that. He's elevated his game to the next level this year, quite clearly. And again, he's the overall Mr. Versatile as well, second row, back row. But I think we've seen in recent weeks, he's a superb footballer as well. I mean, that 50-22 he kicked against France in Paris, that's no accident. It was a superb kick in behind. So, I mean, in fairness to IRFU, that's a very much an astute piece of business to sign him long term now. It's kind of sending a clear message to other players, that this is the project, the long term project, and Byrne is going to be well and truly there. So, massive congratulations. I mean, IRFU contract, obviously, going to stay in Munster rugby as well, hopefully long term as well, which is great. So, no, congratulations to Tyg Byrne there anyway. It's onwards and upwards for him. And then I suppose concluding here, contract news, JJ Hanrahan, news there last week as well, that JJ, his versatility at 10, 12, 15, he's beyond reproach. Super tenure at Munster. we thought Kermon O'Verne, a very valued member, but news now that he is moving from Kermon O'Verne to the Dragons next season. What were your thoughts, Sterling?
Money. In spite of the fact that the Welsh region seem to be struggling for money-wise, suddenly whenever they really need the money to sign marquee players, they seem to have it. It certainly has happened with Cardiff. They have 3 or 4 big signings lined up for next season. And JJ, it's unfortunate because he's going to a team that are going to be pretty much second bottom of the table in the next season or two. At Clermont, he was getting his game time. He was getting his game. So yeah. It's a pity to see that he's kind of such a versatile, skillful player is choosing the Dragons over. To be honest, you almost hope he'd have went to any other team but the Dragons at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, the press release was, speaking to Dean Ryan, he was excited about the project, but I mean, Christ, I think back to the Bernard Jackman days in Dragons, I mean, at least he got a few home wins under his belt. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.